So if you're joining us today, we hope you've been in the series. Raul, you and I have been talking about board meetings, directors, how to lead the real legal side of the ministry. We've talked about what board of directors are. We've talked about having board meetings, how to lead them through. And if you haven't heard those, you can go back in the previous podcast. Now let's talk about minutes. We've had our meeting, right? Wow. And so praise God, we've had it. Now we have to document, right? And I hear a lot of pastors say, "Oh, we've had meetings. We ain't got no minutes."
Right. Right.
Where are the minutes at?
That's a quote right there that you gave me.
That is a quote. So let's define, what are board meeting minutes? What do those actually mean, and why are they so important?
Yeah, usually at a board meeting, the minute taker's a pretty important person.
Absolutely.
Usually the most important person,
Sure.
because you could have spent 2 hours discussing topics, voting on things, and saying yes or no to certain things. And if they weren't documented, that board meeting didn't take place. And that's usually like hard news to swallow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're a minute taker, this moment here, this discussion that we're having is specifically for you, and your pastor will love you for becoming a better minute taker. So when we think about the minute taker or the minutes that are being taken place, you literally are creating a legal document.
Sure.
That has legal weight, and it's a document that's codified in law, in the sense that whatever is in that document, once it's ratified, is protected.
Yeah.
It's a real document that says this is what happened at this meeting, and anything outside of that document didn't really happen.
Section 107 talks about that, right? That we're supposed to be having board meeting minutes, and IRS has actually looked at churches that have said we've had a board meeting, but it didn't have no minutes. It didn't matter if you prayed, didn't matter if you had unity, no minutes, no meeting. You had fellowship.
And specifically, what you're referring to is talking about the housing allowance.
Right.
In which one of the best ways to document that a church has a housing allowance is to put it in the minutes. So that's really important, because a lot of churches will approve a housing allowance,
right,
start writing checks, but there's no minutes to
right.
There aren't minutes to prove that it actually was an actual action taken by the board of directors, and it will completely invalidate a housing allowance, causing
the board
pastor,
meeting minutes are what
That's
validates it, right?
That's right, and that'll cause a pastor to pay back taxes with penalties and interest.
Sure.
So super important.
Having those documented discussions.
That's right.
Documented discussions. So what do these need to have in them? We're talking about board meeting minutes. How are they different, and how do these apply with the corporate veil?
So whenever you are a minute taker, you are using the agenda that is currently created and taking notes in that chronological order, in the same format that the agenda is occurring. And that's what I like about the minute suite that we have,
right,
is that not only do you create minutes, but it also provides a template based on the agenda that you use to take notes. And it's not necessary.
Helps you remember, not skipping a step, right?
That's right. Yeah. You don't forget a step, but it's also important to know that it's not necessary to document every word spoken. A lot of minute takers, they'll write their hands off trying to write, Johnny said this, and Johnny said that, and Eddie said this, and he disagreed.
It's not a transcription.
It's not a transcription, or a blow by blow, boxing match. You basically are saying, this, when you get to that agenda, you're basically going to document the motion that was made, exactly how it was made, and the decisions that were made on those particular agenda items. The discussion isn't as important. And what you also want to document is if someone recuses themselves, you will need to put that into those notes,
right,
that so-and-so recused themselves.
They're given a snapshot. You're really
That's
a
right.
snapshot of what's happening, a written record. We met here at this time, we called to order, here's who voted. Do you like to record the votes who voted, or just the actual number of votes? For example,
right,
yays and nays, or do you like to record this person said yes and this person said no? How do you like that?
I usually record yays and nays unless there is a reason to record a name for someone that voted in a particular topic. And some people want it to go on the record that
right,
they voted no.
Right.
They just weren't one of the nays, and we don't know who it was.
Sure.
So I would only reserve it for those topics that might require it, and only because of a preference, not
Sure,
because of anything in the rules, or a person that says, I want to go on the
sure,
record having said yes or no to this. But typically, if you have minutes, if your bylaws say that you need a simple majority, you have 5 board members, you need a simple majority for an item to pass,
right,
and you get 3 yays and 2 nays, then that item passes, and that's all you need to record.
Right.
3 yeas, 2 nays, passed.
Right.
Lead your board with confidence with the Minute Suite. The Minute Suite walks you step by step through the creation of board meeting minutes that are perfectly formatted to meet state and federal law. Board meeting minute creation, notification, and storage have never been easier. Use the Minute Suite to create the board meeting minutes you need. Visit www.startchurch.com/products and select the Minute Suite to learn more.
So you've got the person there who's taking the minutes. Doesn't matter if that's one of the board members or somebody you've invited in, right? In other words, to be the person who's taking the notes.
That's right.
That are going to be converted.
Right.
Who do you like to have do that?
Yeah, I like it to be a trusted person. And what I mean by that is someone with clerical skill, but someone that can hear what happened at that board meeting and keep it confidential.
Sense of propriety. It doesn't have to be a board member. You can actually bring somebody in who's laptopping, if you will, or just taking notes.
That's right.
as
And
a fly on
I
the wall.
prefer it to be that way.
Yeah.
I prefer to be a person who isn't on the board,
Right.
so that they're not distracted trying
how
to
I
keep trying to do two things at once.
Right.
Write everything down, and then here to also vote and make decisions. So usually it's a person who's very trustworthy, mature in the faith, can hear discussions and it not move them or shake them in their faith, and also they won't tell anyone outside of that meeting.
There's a professionalism, a propriety there. So they're taking notes. Again, you mentioned our Minute Suite. I really love that because I'm not trying to remember what all needs to be covered. I follow my agenda. I work through, and the note taker can take that. How do you convert that into minutes? Okay, so we have our notes.
That's right.
They hand that to one of the board members, but how do we convert that into minutes?
Yeah, so the minute taker will take the written notes that were according to the agenda.
Right.
Then they're gonna, if they're using our Minute Suite, they're gonna grab the minutes template and transfer that data on there. If a lot of times I prefer to take notes by hand. Now, some people are good enough on a laptop, they can type it, they can copy and paste those in, but I like to take it by hand because the minutes sheet, the note-taking form will actually have the blanks for the yays and the nays, and I just write the numbers in. I go ahead and write those in, type those into the actual minutes template, and honestly, when I took minutes, I can go from note-taking form to fully prepared minutes in about half an hour.
Yeah, that's great.
If you do it using the forms and the sheets that we recommend, because the information is already there. The minute-taking form is almost identical in format to the actual minutes, and that's what makes it so much easier.
So that brings us to, we've converted the notes, we're now minutes. Two things we hear a lot of people ask questions about: signatures and seals, right? Who's required? Who do you like to require? As a president and treasurer, president and secretary.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you like that? And then talk about what a seal is. When we talk about a seal, people are like, well, a seal? What is a seal?
Typically, signatures, you only need one. A lot of churches like to have two.
Sure.
A lot of churches have two signatures for checks, or two signatures if a check is above, and they want two signatures on the minutes, right? But the minutes are approved at the next board meeting, in which they're read aloud, and every board member has a chance to vote yay or nay on it. And if the yays have it, those become ratified, and they're usually signed by the secretary, who is the custodial keeper of all the records. They're the custodian of records, and they go into the corporate book of the church.
Corporate records kit.
The corporate records kit, that's right. Usually, it just requires one signature, but also it's best and required that you put a corporate seal on it. And a corporate seal could be a stamp, or it could be an embosser that actually has the name of the church, as it got incorporated, and the year of incorporation, and the state in which it was incorporated. That's our corporate seal.
Right.
I'm a big fan of one that's stamped. It's so much easier than to emboss a paper. And so the signature showing that these were approved according to the bylaws / board meeting minute, and the seal going into the corporate records kit officially has a well-documented board meeting.
So great. It's really the history of your church, right? The decisions. There's going to be things in there about bringing on staff members, how we handled finally saying yes to a building, and some of these great and a church.
You can read through the story of the church.
27 years. I mean, people could go back really and take a look at so many minutes and say, wow, this is when we used our faith for this big move, or this is when we decided this, And
in our church, I can go to minutes, and I can find them all the way back to 1993.
It's amazing.
You know, it's pretty amazing seeing these records and seeing some of the meetings and some of the things we had to believe for that to us back then were huge leaps of faith.
Monumental, yeah.
And it today, by today's standard, we're going, wow, that was really challenging for us because we started a church, we didn't have anything, you know, and to see God provide for us then, and today, that's some of the things that we were believing miracles for. It's just standard today.
Yeah, so
you know,
good.
we'll get more than that in just the offering this Sunday. You know, so it's pretty neat to see how we've grown. And when we were much younger in the faith, we were still leading, and how God has brought us through all these years.
Board meetings are not a formality. They really are a way that if pastors can believe in them, they get behind them, they understand how they're supposed to be doing, you really are building a legacy of your church. I mean, you want your church to go beyond you, right? Both of us have planted churches that we've turned over to other people, and they're continuing to go. The board meeting minutes are something that's special. Believe it or not, right? It's really something special that documents that faith legacy. Raul, thanks for helping us, you know, through this and the discussion on.
I really
board
love
meetings.
this stuff. I do. I think it's just the best protection we could offer the body of Christ when it comes to leading a church, but also following all of the legal requirements. This is fantastic.
That's great. Thanks for joining us.